Welcome to Sustainable Leadership Live. I'm Lisa Danforth, your host, and today I have the wonderful Marie Robinson. Thank you so much for joining us today, Marie. I can't wait to hear what you're going to be sharing.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Lisa, for inviting me onto the show.
Yeah, I met Marie at the Maine Women's Conference last year. And just had a really great time and wanted to bring her message forward because I think it's so very important, especially in today's day and age. But before we jump in, I really wanted to share a little bit about Marie and why I have her here sharing her brilliance today. So as a superintendent, Marie sees the outdoors as a place full of rich learning opportunities for students. This passion, which also fueled her Ph.D. research, is driven by the knowledge that for many years we have been teaching students in subject silos, leading to disjointed and disconnected instruction that rarely allows for the application of learning to occur in a meaningful and authentic way. Marie feels a sense of urgency to shift the focus to the whole child and give agency to educators to make professional decisions about what is best for their students. And today we are talking about leading a journey of sustainable change in public schools. So very needed, especially as a mom of a child who's very smart but did not fit into that traditional way of sitting and being quiet. So let's jump right in, I say. All right. So let's talk about, how do we start to create that sustainable change? What is it that you're thinking is the best way that you have seen is the best way to start?
Absolutely. Lisa, I think there are many entry points, and I think it really sometimes takes a personalized approach, but I think overarching to any kind of change is starting with relationships. Coming in as a new leader, now 7 years ago here at Katahdin Schools, it really was necessary for me to make connections and to gain that trust of those that I'm leading, and then share some of the insights that were brewing in my mind that could potentially begin that process of change.
Yeah. I would imagine as the superintendent of Katahdin Schools that you've seen so much of what is working, but also where you can start bringing in that change, because it is hard to sort of bring in huge change at a time. So that incremental piece, I think, is really, as you were saying, in the green room, it's just so very important to start bringing that in. So where would you suggest for the educators out there, where would you suggest that they really start? Where's a couple of different points to start digging into?
Sure. I think that really there needs to be a self-assessment. If we're talking about individuals, we really need to be honest with ourselves and figure out where we are on that continuum of change and acknowledge maybe some of the fears and some of the barriers that we see. In order for us to move forward, we have to acknowledge and recognize where we are and then know ourselves as people and really understand the people around us as well. And I can kind of share a way that I probably didn't do this in the beginning. A little bit of background is that I grew up and worked the majority of my career in and around the city of Philadelphia. And with a rapid series of events, I ended up launching here and I say launching because it was 10 days between the time that I accepted the position as principal and my family and I were here. Well, some of our family. So we moved 700 miles in about 10 days to take on this, which was a passion of ours. We were excited to move to Maine. But I launched right in and it was a culture shock, to be honest. So I spent a lot of time, and probably in the beginning, it was kind of thinking I had to bring what I knew from the urban environment to this rural school in northern Maine. And what I learned over time is that that's not necessarily the case, right? So we have to be able to know and understand the people we're leading, understand the context, the culture, and really value that, bring a lens of compassion and understanding. So, over time, I was able to learn that, and I've just come to truly appreciate, the people and the community and all that there is to offer. So I think, getting that going is really important. And if you don't do it right away, I can attest to the fact that it is a little bit tricky, but it does work out in the end if you get there. So I think that's most important, is understanding the context. And then the communication. People need to understand the why. So if you're looking to start change, I know in the beginning when we started our outdoor learning journey through these schools, I shared a book with a kindergarten teacher. I had a conversation with a high school teacher. And those small little steps led to huge changes over time. So I think it's about starting small and connecting to your people.
Yeah. And knowing who you are as a leader and what your strengths are and where you can lean into other people. I would love to go a little bit deeper on this outdoor piece because I think that is so very important. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how it's impacted your school?
Absolutely. It began, I'd say, with the transition of me coming here. Prior to moving to Maine, I was involved in the research around my Ph.D., which focused on nature and learning. So I was heavy into researching all of these amazing benefits of being in nature, experiencing nature, and those span, as many of us are aware at this point, physical benefits, social emotional benefits, and cognitive benefits. So coming to Maine and to this rural school that is just filled with natural beauty. The amazing environment around here is just unbelievable. So my thought process really was that everyone would be outside learning and really taking advantage of what was here and what was right in their backyard. So coming from concrete, right? So in the Philadelphia area, we didn't have it, maybe a tree here and there. So I really had this the myth was busted, right? So I got here and come to find out, and I attribute a lot of this just to the No Child Left Behind and the pressure, the unprecedented pressure over the past, say, 10 years for public schools to produce. And what I found was there was a 20-minute recess, and that was it at the elementary level. So
By the time you get them out and back in, that's
Yeah.
20 minutes.
And it's nothing about this district or this school. It was what was happening across the country.
Absolutely.
So I absolutely have felt from that moment a sense of urgency. So we started with small steps. We increased to 30 minutes, first of all. And then, like I mentioned, sharing some books and some ideas with early elementary teachers. We did have a teacher who's been kind of a trailblazer and always been outside, just kind of doing her own thing, which I think is very common in many schools. But then it began to spread. Like I mentioned, there was a high school teacher, and she was also of the mindset that the classroom can extend beyond the four walls of the classroom. So she started with doing some nature journaling with her students, and that transformed into the creation of a high school outdoor ed program. And yeah.
I would love to sort of back up a little bit on that before going into the high school, but how did the children's energy change, their performance change, their ability to focus change by spending more time outside and focusing on moving their bodies and fresh air?
Yeah. We've it's taken time, I will say that. This is a change for everyone, including the children, right? Because they're not used to learning sometimes beyond the classroom. So over time, what we have seen is that when they get their energy out, they come back in and they're able to focus more. So sometimes people view it as, oh, why are we running around outside? We should be learning, right? We should be, or whatever that looks like, right? So I think that, conception of what does learning look like is a big piece to all this. Because what we've seen is some of those kids that sit back in the classroom, maybe aren't as engaged, turn into those team leaders, those supporters, assisting others in the outdoors. So our kindergarten teacher particularly, she has presented at a couple of conferences, and she shares that journey and what she's been seeing over the years. And the reduction of behavioral plans in the classrooms. She said, probably by late fall, she would have maybe 10 or 12 behavior plans in a class of 20. And now
Holy smokes.
she doesn't have them. She
Yeah.
doesn't have them as much. So we're definitely seeing those benefits, and it is difficult to measure, but it is something that we are seeing as observers.
Yeah, I know. I mean, when my kids were in school, like the boys, well, boys and girls, but to
Mhm.
sit all day long and face forward and not fidget and do all of your work, there's that law of diminishing return that comes into play. Like just like in leadership, in work, in life, all of it, there's only so much there. So to start shifting things up, I believe invites more creativity, invites more productivity in
Mhm.
a way that is a little more free flowing, a little more flow.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key, right? It's the balance. It's not to say, we're going to go outside for, 6 hours a day. It's just a matter of an increase that provides that balance because we are whole people, right? We're not bringing children in and just teaching their brain, and for the longest time, that's kind of been the mindset,
Mhm.
like come to school, we're going to teach you. And we didn't do a whole lot of acknowledging the social emotional aspects of learning and the physical aspects of learning. And all the new research that's coming out is just it's pointing in that direction, right? We're
Mhm.
whole people, and even adults. I mean, you can't lead a meeting for 2 hours and expect adults even to sit still,
Right.
or even an hour. So I think it's been wonderful to be able to share that, um, and to see more and more people embracing that as a strategy for supporting student learning.
I find it amazing, not surprising, but amazing how we are taught. It starts at such a very young age to push, drive, more, do, be good, all of those things. And it just escalates as we go through. And it, to me, has not been beneficial. I look at the world of burnout these days
Mhm.
and world of burnout in your industry as well. Let's talk a little bit about in the green room. You had mentioned some amazing program or retreat that you were offering for leaders, and instructors, teachers, and whatnot.
Yes, there's a group of us that have recently gotten together, and with the funding from some Maine-based foundations, we've been able to offer an educator renewal retreat. And this is something that has been evident that we often say, well, teachers just need to breathe, and teachers just need to exercise, and leaders need to take care of themselves. But then we load up realistically an unrealistic set of expectations. And I will say that people that get into education are giving people. They want to give. So what happens is they're trying desperately, this is my observation, trying desperately to meet the needs of everyone else, and then really oftentimes fall short with meeting the needs of themselves. And kind of like the airplane, what do they say when you're about to fly? You've got to put your oxygen mask on first. And that's what we're trying to help folks to do. It's a day-long retreat that, again, we've been able to offer free to educators.
So
Throughout
awesome.
that day, is it art and wellness? We have some movement through yoga. We have some sound healing, and a wonderful practitioner who focuses on the foods we put in our body.
Yes.
Often an unnoticed or undiscussed piece of how important what we're putting into
Mhm.
our body is when it comes to bringing our best selves to whatever it is we're doing in life.
That brain gut connection is real. And I love the fact that we're finally bringing it forward. What we put in our body, it fuels our brain, it fuels our energy. Heather, thanks so much for joining us today. She says, I love the comment, we're not just teaching brains. So, so true. Yeah, I want to back, you were talking about the unrealistic expectations of the teachers, but also of the children. So how do we start this process for sustainable change? Like how, I know we're leaning into that, but like
Mhm.
that unrealistic, how do we even approach that? Because when it's unrealistic, sometimes we don't even see it, right? It's the way
Right.
that it is. It's the way that we've always done things.
I believe that it starts with school leaders. Um, I have had many conversations, and even the conversation with the kindergarten teacher was kind of a shock. Like, you mean I can take them outside and beyond recess? So I think leaders are the beginning.
Mhm.
We have to stand up against what's been pressured and pushed and pushed. I mean, I think, most recently I'm trying to compare because I keep hearing this, learning loss and get kids caught up and get them back where they need to be and raise the standards. And I think, my God, what are we doing? Because I know when I have a setback, such as a global pandemic, I am not trying to get back to achieving what I was able to do before that. So I think we have to start with that mindset of, what are we really doing to kids when we're saying, I know that there was a global pandemic, but you've got to reach your grade 3 learning standards. And,
Mhm.
we have to keep going and keep going. When what we're seeing is a result of the pandemic was there was such a wide range of experiences that kids had. They learned in many different ways, but we
Yes.
have to, in my opinion, embrace that and not bring them back to school and then remind them of what they still don't know. That is probably the biggest piece for me that frustrates me in the way that public school runs is we spend a lot of time on what kids don't know instead of spending lots of time on finding out what they do know and then embracing those strengths and allowing them to flourish. And it's no one's fault by any means. It's the way things have happened and the way that the system has worked. So I'm a firm believer. I mean, I'm one that will speak up and start a little bit of a ruckus. I've used the words education revolution
I love
in
that.
several contexts.
Mhm.
But I think that's what it takes. Our kids deserve way better than coming in and reminding them of what they don't know and then making them practice it again and again.
Right. I love what you said, that it's no one's fault, but I believe that it is our responsibility to notice it and start shifting. I mean, when we feel better, we do better,
Right.
physically, emotionally, all of it in business. Why wouldn't that start in the school when we really lean into someone's strengths rather than poking at the weaknesses? It's not to say that we, as you know, that we don't inspire children to learn from different perspectives and whatnot, but I do believe that it is our responsibility to start looking at what is working in the school system, what is working in the classroom. How can you take that with an individual child, their strengths, and lean into that, that would have them step into wanting to learn from a different perspective or a new idea?
And I think something to celebrate is definitely here at Katahdin Schools, we have so many amazing and dedicated educators and staff. I think that that needs to be acknowledged, and that is the case in every single school system. We are all here doing the best we can and trying the best that we can with what we have to work with. I am just, and I know that we're not alone at our district when I say that we have custodians who are having amazing conversations with kids. We have bus drivers that are, greeting and helping kids have a wonderful day. We have support staff that are there, um, to lend an ear. And then we have, the educators that are embracing this innovation. They're seeking out new ways of doing things. We've been fortunate to have consultants come that have helped us to close that research to practice gap, which we know in education is quite wide. We have the brain research that has exploded the past 20 years, hasn't reached all of the nooks and crannies of professional learning. For teachers. So that's an important aspect of this too. It's multifaceted, and
Mhm.
there isn't one simple answer to this. But we definitely have to be acknowledging that things need to change and then looking at those incremental steps we can take to get there.
The word curiosity just keeps popping into my head, right? There's no one way. There's no one way to teach. There's no one way to learn. There's no one way to do anything but to bring the curiosity to the table. And I think going outdoors and exploring nature and approaching education from a different level, a level of curiosity rather than rigidity, will benefit everyone in the long run and the long term. It can definitely be difficult. Believe it or not, we are at time. I mean, I think I need to have you back to continue this conversation. So
this has been wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would like for you to share where people can reach out to you, especially for this retreat. I think as educators, we need to, if we could start pockets of this, supporting educators in a way that supports and sustains them so they can show up at school teaching their children in a much more productive, calm environment.
Absolutely. But people can reach me. I'd say the best place at this point is LinkedIn. And you can search Marie Robinson, Ph.D., and you can connect with me there. That is where I post information about the educator renewal retreat. Right now, it's just been twice a year. We just completed our second one on Saturday, and it's happened in Maine, but we are talking about looking beyond the state to be able to support others in various areas.
I absolutely love that. I think it's so very important. Heather, so inspiring. Thanks for your great work. You are up to some amazing things, and I can see this beautiful synergistic quality just growing and growing as you bring more people in and helping us be better people, better teachers, better leaders, better learners, all of it. So thank you for all that you do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Hey, I do want to ask you a question.
Sure.
Before we wrap up. What one habit or boundary has supported you in living and leading a more sustainable life?
One habit is taking care of my body. That's it. You've got to find the time. You've got to make the time, and whatever that looks like for you, take care of your body. We only get one, and we need it to keep functioning as the best that it possibly can.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's so important. Like you said, that brain gut connection, it just feeds everything. We just show up more fully everywhere. So that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Next week, which is the 5th Wednesday in March, which is March 29th, Shauna Van Mark is going to be showing up, and she's going to be talking about how can we show up sustainably in life and in business. So please join us next week, March 29th, 10 a.m. East Coast, 7 a.m. on the Pacific, if you're dialing in that early in the morning. So thank you so much for joining us, everyone. I really do appreciate it. And Marie, thank you for sharing your brilliance, your gifts, and really starting on this journey and leading it in a way that is just sustainable.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.